I never liked dating apps, but at 21, I figured it was time to give them a shot. Everyone else was using them, so why not? I didn't expect anything serious, just a few conversations, maybe a fun date or two. For the first week, everything was normal. I matched with a few people, had some decent conversations, but nothing really stuck. Then I matched with Tony. Her profile said she was 21, just like me. She had short, dark hair, a confident smirk in every picture, and a bio that read, "Here for fun, not drama." She seemed cool, and she messaged me first, which I liked. I hated feeling like I had to initiate everything. At first, she was funny, easy to talk to, and a little flirty without being pushy. We messaged for about an hour, and then I told her I had plans for the evening. She sent a casual "have fun, talk later," and that was that. Or so I thought. When I checked my phone later that night, I had 20 unread messages from her. Some were casual updates about her day. Others were short, rapid messages. "Hey, what's up? You there? Did I say something wrong? Good night, smiley face. Good night again, lol. Hope you're sleeping well." The last message had been sent at 3:14 a.m. I felt uneasy. It was too much, too soon. I barely knew her, yet she was acting like we were already deep into something serious. I decided to ignore it until morning. When I woke up, there were more messages. "Good morning. Hope you have a great day." I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. I had only matched with her yesterday. Why was she acting like we had been together for weeks? I replied politely, trying to set a boundary without being rude. I told her I'd been busy the night before and asked how her morning was going. She replied instantly, "Good now that you're here." I started to get that gut feeling, the one that tells you something isn't quite right. Still, I told myself she was just enthusiastic. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she didn't realize she was coming off too strong. Then, the conversation took a turn. She asked me about my birthday. I told her I had just turned 21 a few months ago. "Oh, haha, same," she replied. I frowned. Her profile said she was already 21. "Wait," I typed. "I thought your bio said you were already 21? There was a long pause. Her first delayed response. "Oh yeah, haha. I actually turned 19 a few months ago. My bad. I put the wrong age when I signed up and never fixed it. But I wrote it in my bio." That didn't sit right with me. I had read her entire bio before swiping right. She had never mentioned being 19. I went back to check, and there it was, actually 19, not 21, right at the top of her bio. She had just changed it. I called her out. "You edited that just now, didn't you?" Another long pause. "No, it's always been there. You must have just missed it." Well, something in me snapped. She wasn't just clingy, she was manipulative. I didn't respond. Instead, I unmatched her and figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. That night, as I was scrolling through Tinder, I saw her profile again. She had made a new account. Same pictures, same name. But now, at the very top of her bio, in all caps, it said, "Please just talk to me, Jessica. I'm sorry." I nearly dropped my phone. How had she found me again? Had she made multiple accounts? Was she remaking them over and over, hoping I'd swipe right? For days, I kept checking Tinder, both out of fear and morbid curiosity. Every few days, a new Tony account would appear. Each time, her bio would change slightly, always a desperate message directed at me. "I really liked you. Please give me another chance. I don't understand why you're ignoring me. I'm sorry for whatever I did. Just tell me." It felt like she was speaking directly to me, like she somehow knew I was reading them. I deleted my account. For a while, things were quiet. Then, one night, I got a Snapchat notification. A friend request from Tony. I had never given her my Snapchat. Panic surged through me. I didn't accept the request. I just stared at my phone, my hands shaking. How did she find me? I blocked her immediately. A few days later, I got an Instagram follow request. Her again. Blocked. Then, a Facebook message request. Blocked. I felt hunted. Like no matter how many times I cut her off, she always found another way to reach me. Then, the worst part. One night, I was leaving my apartment when I noticed a car parked across the street. A person sat in the driver's seat, barely visible in the dim glow of a street lamp. Something about the way they were sitting made my skin crawl. I turned away quickly, telling myself I was being paranoid. But as I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Hey, you're still ignoring me?" I felt cold. I didn't reply. I got in my car and drove away. By the time I got home later that night, the car was gone. After that, things stopped. No more messages. No more accounts. Months passed, and I finally started to feel safe again. Then, one day, out of nowhere, a new Instagram request. The username was random, no profile picture, no bio. But when I clicked the profile, there was only one post. A black screen, with white text. It simply said, "I'll find you again someday." I deleted my Instagram that night, and I've never used a dating app since. I was 17 the first time I thought I might die. At that age, I thought I was invincible. I had a part-time job at the mall, my own car, and the freedom to go wherever I wanted without my parents checking in on me every hour. I had never been in a truly dangerous situation before, so I assumed I would know when something was wrong, that I'd be able to sense it, to see the red flags before it was too late. I was wrong, and if things had gone even slightly differently that night, I wouldn't be here to tell this story. I met Jordan at work. He wasn't much older than me, 19, maybe 20, but at the time, he seemed so much more mature than the guys in my school. He had tattoos, a deep voice, and the kind of confidence that made him impossible to ignore. At first, I wasn't interested. He flirted with me every time he came by my store, but I brushed it off, assuming he was like that with everyone. Then one night, he found me in the food court during my break. "Let me take you out sometime," he said, flashing that cocky smile. I hesitated. I barely knew him, but he was persistent, and something about his charm made it hard to say no. So I said yes. The night of our date, he picked me up at 9 p.m. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I had assumed we'd be going somewhere. A restaurant, a party, maybe even just a drive. Instead, he told me he wanted to chill at his place first. That should have been my first warning sign. But I was young, naive, and still convinced that bad things didn't happen to me. His house was on the outskirts of town, far from any streetlights or busy roads. As soon as we pulled up, my stomach twisted. The driveway was empty. No other cars. The house itself was dark. No porch light. No glow from the windows. Like it was completely abandoned. I forced myself to shake off the unease. Maybe his roommates were out. Maybe his lights were off to save electricity. "Come inside," he said, already getting out of the car. I hesitated. "Were you scared?" he teased. That should have been my second warning sign, but I ignored it and followed him inside. The house smelled off, like old smoke and something stale, like the air hadn't moved in days. I could barely see as I stepped inside. The only light came from a single red lamp in the living room, casting everything in a dull, blood-colored glow. "Take a seat," he said, tossing his keys onto the counter. I sat on the couch, stiff and uncomfortable. I didn't know what to say, and something about the silence in that house made my skin crawl. "You smoke?" he asked, pulling a blunt from his pocket. I hesitated. I wasn't much of a smoker, but I had done it a few times with friends. It wasn't a big deal. He must have noticed my hesitation because he laughed. "Relax," he said, sitting next to me. "It'll help you chill." I didn't want to look immature, so I took it when he handed it to me. I took one hit, then another, and that's when I knew something was wrong. The room tilted. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs, too fast, too loud. I tried to speak, but my tongue felt thick, my throat dry. "Whoa!" I gasped, gripping the arm of the couch. What was in that? Jordan just grinned. Something was off about his smile. Too wide, too satisfied. "Just some good shit," he said, leaning closer. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't move properly. My body felt heavy, like I was sinking into the couch. I realized then what had happened. It was laced. My stomach twisted. My skin buzzed. Not in a pleasant way, but in a way that made me feel like I wasn't fully in my body anymore. Panic set in. I tried to reach for my phone, but my fingers wouldn't respond the way I wanted them to. Everything felt delayed. like I was trapped in slow motion. Jordan's hand brushed against my knee. "Just relax," he murmured. I jerked away, or tried to, but my body wasn't cooperating. He leaned in closer. His breath was hot against my ear. "I like when girls don't talk too much," he whispered. That's when I knew. I was in serious trouble. I fought against the fog in my head, forcing myself to focus. I tried to stand again, but my legs buckled, and I ended up on the floor. Jordan laughed. "Whoa, careful there," he said, kneeling down beside me. I tried to crawl toward the door, but my arms felt like jelly, my muscles barely responding. His hand grabbed my wrist. I kicked out, my foot barely connecting with his chest. It wasn't enough to hurt him, but it was enough to catch him off guard. I scrambled forward, dragging myself toward the door. Then, a sound outside. A car door slamming. Jordan froze. I took my chance. I lunged for the front door handle, my fingers clumsy but desperate. "Hey!" he snapped, reaching for me. I threw all my weight against the door and stumbled outside. The fresh air hit me like a slap to the face. I was still dizzy, still drugged, but I forced myself to keep moving. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a voice. "Hey, everything okay over there?" A cop. A police cruiser was parked just a few houses down. The officer was getting out, eyeing us suspiciously. Jordan immediately backed off, throwing his hands up. "Yeah, everything's fine," he called out. But the cop wasn't stupid. He saw me, barefoot, stumbling, my face pale as a ghost. "You okay, miss?" he asked. I nodded too fast, trying to play it cool. I didn't want to admit what had happened. I didn't want to make things worse. But as soon as the cop turned toward Jordan, I ran. I ran down the street, away from that house, my heart hammering. I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember much at all after that, just the lingering feeling of dread in my chest. Jordan never texted me again, but sometimes, when I was at work, I would see him in the mall. He never approached me. He never said a word. But every time I walked past him, he would just smirk, like he knew something I didn't. And that was almost worse than the night itself. I was 19 when I had the worst date of my life. It was my first year of college, and I had spent the past few months feeling lonely as hell. I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and while I wasn't necessarily looking for anything serious, I missed having someone to talk to, someone who made me feel wanted. That's how I ended up on Tinder. I wasn't expecting much, but then I matched with Zach. He was cute, tall, dark-haired, a little rough around the edges, but in a way that made him seem charming rather than creepy. He had a great sense of humor, and after just a few days of talking, I already felt like I knew him. When he asked me out on Valentine's Day, I hesitated. The idea of a first date on a day meant for couples seemed weirdly intense, but he convinced me it was just bad timing, that he didn't want me to spend the day alone. Looking back, I should have listened to my gut, because the moment I got into his car, I knew something was wrong. He picked me up at 8 p.m. I had assumed we were going to a restaurant or a bar, something normal, but as soon as I buckled my seatbelt, I realized we weren't heading toward town. The roads got darker. The streetlights became more and more sparse, until we were driving down a nearly empty highway. I tried to laugh it off. "Where are we going?" I asked, keeping my tone light. He glanced at me and smiled, but there was something about it that made my stomach twist. "I thought we could drive around for a bit first," he said. "I like to talk without distractions." I nodded slowly. I wasn't scared yet, but I was definitely on edge. I pulled out my phone to check the time. No service. That's when the unease turned into fear. The car slowed as we turned onto a narrow dirt road. I gripped my seatbelt. "Seriously, where are we going?" His smile dropped. "I just wanted to take you somewhere private," he said, "so we could talk." My heart started pounding. I looked around, realizing just how isolated we were. The road was surrounded by empty fields, with nothing but abandoned houses and unfinished developments scattered in the distance. There were no other cars, no lights, no way to call for help. I forced a laugh. "Okay, well, this is a little creepy, don't you think?" He didn't laugh with me. Instead, he pulled the car to a stop in front of an unfinished housing development. The skeletal frame of a house loomed ahead, its wooden beams exposed to the night air. The whole place felt deserted, like a ghost town before it had even been built. Zach shifted in his seat. "You're not scared, are you?" Something in his voice made my skin crawl. I smiled, even though my hands were shaking. "Of course not," I lied. He leaned in slightly. "Good," he said, "because I like my girls to be fun." I swallowed hard. "I think I'd feel better if we went somewhere else," I said, keeping my tone casual, trying not to sound desperate. He tilted his head, watching me. Then he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You're really pretty. You know that?" I froze. Every single instinct in my body screamed run, but I was trapped. There was nothing but miles of darkness outside. If I got out of the car, where would I go? I had no service. No one knew where I was. I had made a huge mistake. His fingers traveled down my arm, his touch light but possessive. "You're acting kind of nervous," he said. "Relax." I forced myself to smile, even as I fought the urge to scream. I needed to think. I needed to get out of there without setting him off. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I played along. I reached up and tucked my hair behind my ear, glancing at him shyly. "It's just, I've never been here before," I said softly. "It's kind of exciting." Zach's eyes lit up. "I knew you'd be cool," he murmured, leaning in closer. I forced myself not to flinch. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but I kept my face calm, pretending I wasn't petrified. "Maybe we should get back on the road," I suggested gently. "We can grab food or something. I bet you know some great places." I saw the conflict flash across his face. For a second, I thought he might say no. Then, finally, he sighed and pulled back. "Yeah, okay, but only because I'm hungry." I let out a breath, my pulse racing. The drive back was silent. Zach's entire demeanor had changed. He was tense, gripping the wheel tightly, his jaw clenched. I didn't say a word. I just watched the road, counting every mile back to civilization. When we finally reached a small, deserted gas station, he pulled over. "This isn't my scene," he muttered, shaking his head. "You're not like other girls I take out." I stayed completely still. "Other girls?" I asked carefully. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah, you're the first one to say no." A cold chill ran down my spine. I grabbed my purse and opened the car door before he could stop me. He didn't follow. He just sat there, gripping the wheel, staring straight ahead. As soon as I stepped inside the gas station, I rushed to the counter. The cashier, an older man with tired eyes, looked up. "Everything okay?" he asked. I turned to look back outside. Zach's car was already gone. He had left me there, alone, at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. I never saw him again after that night, but sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't played along, if I had fought him, would I have made it out at all? I met Ryan through a dating app. He wasn't the kind of guy I usually went for. Tall, blonde, preppy, but he seemed nice enough. We had been talking for about a week before he suggested we hang out. Nothing fancy, just a movie at his place. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with it. I had gone to a guy's house on the first date before, and it had always been fine. Plus, he had been polite. No weird comments, no red flags. Or so I thought. I told him I couldn't stay long, that I had work in the morning, and he said that was totally fine. "Come over for a bit," he said. "I'll order some food, we'll watch a movie, and you can head home whenever." Seemed harmless. But from the moment I stepped into his apartment, I knew something was off. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not bad, just off. Like stale air and something faintly metallic, like pennies. The second thing I noticed? The lack of furniture. His apartment was weirdly empty. No coffee table, no decorations, not even a single picture on the walls. The living room had just a couch, a massive TV, and a single lamp in the corner that cast strange, stretched shadows across the walls. Something about it made my skin crawl. I forced a smile. "Nice place." He grinned. "Thanks. You're the first girl I've had over in a while." I nodded, pretending not to notice that there were no signs of anyone living here long term. No clutter, no mail, No personality. Just empty space. He motioned for me to sit on the couch. "What movie do you want to watch?" I shrugged, already feeling uneasy. "You pick." He didn't turn on the TV. Instead, he sat uncomfortably close to me and stared. "You're really pretty," he said. I laughed awkwardly. "Thanks." He kept staring. Not in the way a guy looks at a girl he likes. In the way a predator watches something small and helpless. I shifted slightly, putting some space between us. "So, did you order food yet?" His face twitched, just for a second. Then, suddenly, he smiled. "Oh yeah, I forgot." Forgot? I had been here for 20 minutes. I watched as he pulled out his phone and pretended to scroll through an app. He wasn't ordering anything. He was stalling. Something cold settled in my stomach. I glanced toward the front door. Unlocked. Good. I just needed an excuse to leave. 20 more minutes passed. Still no food. Still no movie. Every time I tried to bring it up, he would change the subject, steering the conversation into uncomfortable territory. "How many guys have you dated? You ever had a one-night stand? Would you ever date an older guy?" The whole time, he kept leaning closer. At one point, he grabbed my hand and started playing with my fingers. His hands were ice cold. My stomach churned. I tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip just for a second. Then he let go, smiling like nothing had happened. Something in me snapped. I needed to get out of there. Now, I forced a laugh. "Hey, I just remembered. I have to wake up really early for work. Rain check on the movie?" His smile vanished. "What? You just got here." I grabbed my purse. "Yeah, I know, but I really should." He moved fast. 1 second, he was sitting next to me. The next, he was blocking the door. "You can stay a little longer," he said. Not a request. A statement. I swallowed hard. "I really can't." He snatched my purse. My breath caught in my throat. He didn't rifle through it. Didn't take anything out. He just held it, dangling it in front of me. Like a threat. "You're acting weird," he said, tilting his head. Did I do something wrong? I forced a smile, heart hammering in my chest. "No, not at all. I just really have to go." His grip on my purse tightened. Then he exhaled sharply. "Fine," he said, tossing it onto the couch. "At least take off your shoes and stay a little longer." "What?" I stared at him. "My shoes?" He took a step closer. "It's weird that you're wearing them inside," he said. "Take them off." My stomach twisted. I shook my head. "Nah, I'm good." His smile twitched. Then, before I could react, he reached down and yanked my shoe off my foot. I jerked backward, heart pounding in my throat. "Dude, what the hell?" He laughed. "You look tense," he said. "I was just trying to help you relax." My pulse was thundering in my ears now. I needed to get the hell out of there. I reached for my shoe, but he grabbed my wrist. Not hard. Not enough to hurt. Just enough to let me know he could if he wanted to. I met his gaze. There was nothing there. No amusement. No frustration. Just cold calculation. My stomach dropped. I forced myself to laugh. Okay, you win. I'll stay for a bit longer." He let go, and in that split second, I lunged for my purse. He reached for me, but I was faster. I grabbed it, grabbed my shoe, and sprinted for the door. I yanked it open, my breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps, and ran. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. Didn't look back. Didn't breathe until I was speeding down the street, my hands shaking against the wheel. I never heard from him again. Never got a text. Never saw him on the app. It was like he had vanished. But sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't played along, if I hadn't lied to keep him calm, would I have made it out at all? The online predator. I was 16 when I met John. It started the way these things always do. Innocent, casual, harmless. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I had been using an online role-playing forum for months, escaping into stories with strangers who shared my interests. Most people were just there for fun. But John? John was different. He messaged me first. "Your writing is really good." I smiled at my screen. Compliments were common in these spaces, But something about his felt real. Like he wasn't just being polite. He actually meant it. Thanks, I typed back. We should roleplay together sometime. It started like that. Small, simple, unassuming. I had no idea that a single message would turn into years of manipulation, abuse, and control. John was older. He told me he was 20, though I would later find out that was a lie. He was actually 27 when we first started talking. I didn't see the red flags at first. He was charming, patient, funny. He asked about my stories, my hobbies, my favorite movies. He made me feel like I was important, like I wasn't just some dumb kid. I looked forward to his messages, and soon, he wasn't just a stranger on the forum anymore. He was my best friend. That's how he got inside my head. Slowly, carefully, deliberately. It started with flirty comments. If we lived closer, I'd totally take you out on a date. You're more mature than most girls your age. I bet guys at your school don't even appreciate how special you are. At 16, I was insecure, lonely, desperate for attention. And John? John made me feel wanted. Eventually, he started asking for secrets. Tell me something you've never told anyone. I did. I told him about fights with my parents, bad grades, my deepest fears. He listened. And then, one night, he told me about his secrets. About how he had a thing for younger girls. Not like in a creepy way, he assured me. It's just they're more pure, more innocent. Women my age are all bitter and ruined. I should have blocked him. I should have run the second he said that, but I didn't. Because by then, I was already under his control. A few months in, things escalated. I love you, he typed one night. I stared at the screen. My stomach flipped. You do? Of course. I think about you all the time. No one had ever said those words to me before, so I said them back. Even though I had never met him in person, even though I didn't know what he looked like beyond the blurry profile picture he had sent me, even though something inside me was whispering this isn't right. But it was too late. John had me. He started controlling me after that. Don't talk to other guys. They don't understand you like I do. Send me a picture. I just want to see you. You don't really love me if you won't do this for me. At first, I resisted. I told him I wasn't comfortable, that I didn't like taking pictures of myself. But John was patient. It's okay. I'll wait until you're ready. And that was almost worse. Because he never yelled. Never demanded. He just made me feel like I was hurting him every time I said no. So eventually, I gave in. By the time I was 17, I was completely isolated. I stopped going out with friends. I stopped talking to guys at school. John had convinced me that he was the only person who truly cared about me. Then, one night, he asked if we could finally meet in person. I want to hold you, he said. I want to kiss you. I was terrified. I told him I wasn't sure. He got quiet. I guess I'm just wasting my time, he said. I thought you loved me. And so, like always, I caved. I agreed to meet him. He drove 3 hours to pick me up. He told me not to tell my parents, not to bring my phone. Just tell them you're staying at a friend's house. I should have said no, but by then, I wasn't me anymore. I was his. So I got in his car, and that was the worst mistake of my life. He took me to his house, a tiny, dirty apartment in a city I didn't recognize. His mother was there. She barely looked at me as I walked in, just nodded and muttered something about how she was glad he found someone. Then John led me to his room and locked the door. I don't want to talk about what happened after that, but I will say this. The boy I fell in love with online wasn't real. The man standing in front of me was a stranger, a monster. And by the time I realized that, it was too late. I stayed with him for a week of manipulation, drugs, and abuse. I wanted to leave, but he told me I couldn't. You belong to me now. He made me feel worthless, broken, ruined, like no one would ever love me after him. And for a long time, I believed him. I don't know how much longer I would have stayed if it weren't for Emily. She was his neighbor, just a few years older than me. She saw the bruises. She saw the way I flinched whenever he touched me. And one night, when John was asleep, she knocked on the window. "Do you want to go home?" she whispered. I almost said no. I almost stayed. But then I thought about my parents, my friends. The person I used to be before John got inside my head. And I nodded. Emily called the police. They found videos on his computer. Dozens of them. Not just of me. Of other girls before me. Girls younger than me. John was arrested. I went home. And for a long time, I thought I would never recover. But now, years later, I finally understand something. I was never broken. He just wanted me to think I was.